Grace and peace, grace and peace. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of You're Doing It Wrong. My name is Brandon. Last month, I had the honor and privilege of having my brothers Jamel and Elder Lee just having a discussion on fatherhood. Just a really, really great discussion. I had finished editing that video and just they did a phenomenal job just opening up, being vulnerable and transparent, and just had a really good time just enjoying these brothers' experience and wisdom, man. Just a lot of wisdom going on. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check it out, please do on Spotify, iTunes. The visuals are on YouTube. But this month I'm very, very honored and blessed to have some more special guests here with me today. Miss Shirnetta and Miss Paula Lee, just here to continue that conversation. You know, I was making a joke too, because these are coming out, I'm recording a month ahead, and it would have been wise to like do this around Mother's Day and record it then. But you know how things go. I guess I'm on brand doing it wrong, but it's still a universal conversation and a good one to have. So I'm just excited to discuss motherhood with these individuals today. And like I said, I'm not gonna hold you guys too much. We're gonna jump right in. But how are you guys doing today? Starting with you, Shirnetta. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely, absolutely. How about you, Miss Paula? How are you doing today?
Today is a good day. Thank you, Jesus.
It's hot. It's hot.
Yes,
Oh, it's hot.
is.
It's definitely hot.
And what I wanted to start this conversation here because I had a conversation with your husbands 2 months ago, and it went really well. And when you guys informed me that, hey, we would love to have a conversation on mother, I was like, man, that was really cool. And I like to think, well, I am an overthinker, and I was like, how am I going to introduce them? And I found myself wrestling with this idea of introducing you as such and such as wives, and I had to catch myself because I'm like, why do I have to introduce them as such and such wives? Because they can stand on their own merit. And I feel like with a lot of women, they're just kind of viewed as just either wives or just as mothers, and I feel like that's a stigma that kind of only happens to women. It doesn't really happen to men, because even thinking back on my childhood, I just kind of viewed my mother just as my mother, and not as if she had a life outside of that. So I just wanted to open up and start from there. Like, has that been a struggle? Do you see that just common, that women are just kind of viewed, kind of put in that box and can't have a life outside of just being a wife and a mother? And I'll start with you, Shirnetta. What are your thoughts on that?
So I definitely think that is a universal kind of controversy. I think that, especially in spaces of faith, I think that some women are taught, or some women, believe that being a mother is their identity. That's what they were raised to be. That's what they were raised to strive to be. And I think that having a 6-month-old son, that was something that I even kind of wrestled with. When he was born, I've always kind of been very outgoing. I've always been a creative. And I think that when he was born and I was at home on maternity leave, I found myself like, who am I becoming? Who is this person? What happened to my dreams? What happened to, this career that I worked so hard for? And there was some inappropriate guilt there. There was some guilt. And it was, wow, I feel bad about, wanting to go back to work. So I definitely think that, even having my own business and empowering women, I think that is definitely a ongoing conversation about, who women are, what their identity is. And I think that a lot of women and mothers do struggle with that. So, yeah.
What about you, Paula?
Definitely identify. I've been there with that one. As a young mom, that was, I always wanted to be a wife and a mom. When people used to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would say a wife and a mom. They're like, okay, but what else do you want to be? As if that wasn't noble. And so I never understood why people didn't think like that was enough.
Yeah.
So then I became a wife and a mom, and then like you, baby number one, and it's like, and then people would say, oh, look at you and your little family. Oh, you're William's wife. Oh, you're such and such as mom. And I remember thinking one day inside my head, like, I'm Paula. I have a name. I have a name. And so it was really frustrating for a long while until I went back and grabbed me again. You really have to grab yourself again. And as you add more children, you know, you have to recreate, like you said, becoming. That's a very appropriate word. You're always becoming, because you're always transitioning. Like at this point, I have become a grandma. So that even has changed the dynamic of how I move, what I say, what I do. So, yeah. At this point in my life, though, and there comes a point where you don't care if somebody says, "Oh, you're William Lee's wife," but when you're in those early stages, it's really it is a little bit tougher.
So where did you learn to value that? Is it kind of a generational thing? Because again, I guess me and Shirnetta are in the same millennial, and that's kind of like a foreign concept where, hey, my desire is to be a wife and a mother, and most people would kind of view that as like old-fashioned, or I want to, because I guess now I think even the statistic is like, you know, the majority of black women, there's a high percentage of black women graduating colleges, so they're more career-oriented women. But who instilled that in you, or is it just something that you always wanted? Did you see that example set before you?
Well, I knew that that had been my mother's desire, and she wasn't able to fulfill that. But more importantly, I think it was God's plan for me. And so I feel like that was innate, because even in my generation, that was very key. I'm a 60s baby. So we're talking, you know, you can bring home the bacon, fried up in a pan, never let your husband forget he's a man because you're a woman. You know, so that was a thing as I was growing up. And so that was why I got the comment, like, why would you want to stay home and raise kids? Because everybody was striving to go to work. So I was an anomaly, and that was hard.
And I think for me, my upbringing was very, very different. So growing up, and I've shared this on many platforms, my mother was married and divorced several times, and as a result, I was raised by single women, a single grandmother, very strong alpha women. And so growing up, marriage and motherhood was not really something that I strived to be. It was, let's go get this money, let's get a career, travel the world. I mean, it was, that just wasn't something that was kind of on my mind, or something that I strive to be. It was definitely something I've always wanted, but it wasn't necessarily, I don't know, I just had a different perspective about it. So growing up, and even, when I met my husband, I was in graduate school at the time, and I was like, oh, I'm about to go get my PhD. Like I'm just out here living it up. and so when we got married, and when I, had a baby, that was when I was just like, wow, like, who am I becoming? But I think that what really reminds me of my identity, and while I was at home, for those 3 months, was really getting into the Word. And, God really reminded me that I'm a daughter first. So, yeah.
So you spoke on guilt. How did you overcome that guilt? Is it something that you still struggle with? Because like you said, you get to stay home with your son, and then it's like, man, I have to go back.
Yeah.
How did you wrestle with that guilt, or is it something that you're still wrestling with?
No. So I think that how I was able to overcome that was shifting the perspective to, what will my children think of me? Judah, my son, will say, wow, regardless of the decisions that my mother made, she did her best in raising me. So my desire to go back to work, or even if I chose to stay at home, my children wouldn't think of me any different. Because at the end of the day, I'm still a mother, and I'm still, striving, after God. So for me, my inappropriate guilt was just more of my own internal thing. And I think that also came, from being in spaces of faith, knowing a lot of different women. I was like, wow, this staying at home thing, like, I think I could do this. And I was like, oh. I said, oh, Jesus.
It's more than a notion.
Yes, it is. And, to that, now that I have a child, and now that I have been home for a couple of months, I have a new level of respect for women and new level of respect for mothers who do stay at home, who or breastfeed. I mean, it's just a different array of things to have a respect for with mothers. So yeah.
No, and talking about this idea of identity from the outside looking in, I'm able to see like certain double standards that go on where I was telling Paula earlier before you got in, this idea of like a man cave, where a man, once he comes home from work, he that expectation is he can go and just be to himself, and it's like where's that time for a woman to have her woman cave or whatever you want to call it. So how do you guys find time for yourselves?
Let me throw in something here on because I want to go back to the identity piece, because this kind of is a part of this as well. You had inappropriate guilt. I had inappropriate identity, because although my whole plan was to stay at home and raise my kids, when our first daughter was a year old, I was done. I'm like, this is not what I expected. All I do is talk to a person who can't talk back. It's diapers, more diapers, nights, more nights. And, my husband was working 12-hour shifts at the time. And we had one car, which means I'm home. And so after year one, I said, I think I'm going back to work. And he said, well, okay. So I went back to work, because I needed that. You're doing a good job. Here's this is how much salary you're going to get paid. I had a skill set, that I was getting paid for, and you get reviews and performance and all of that. And it was the wrong thing for me. And my child paid because I circumvented what he had for me. He told me to stay at home, and it was really both of our responsibility for me to determine how to be successful at that. And I was in the workforce for about 4 years, and my daughter had really bad asthma and allergies, and it was exacerbated by being in daycare after daycare after daycare, because I was picky. I was picky where I put my child, and I even created you had to fill out an application to keep my child. Like, I created one, and I would take it in, and if they side-eyed me, I took my application and my child, and I went home. Like, if you think this is a joke, this is my prized possession. And God was like, nobody's going to treat her like you. If you want her done like that, you need to raise her yourself. So I was like, so after 4 years, we bit the bullet, and I came back home, and that was where I began my search for how do we do this effectively, because there were other moms who were seeking to do what I was doing. And so now my whole strive is to help moms who want to do it. If you don't want to do it, like, I don't ever push being a stay-at-home mom on any woman, because I feel like it's a personal choice. And so when women say to me, well, I don't think I could do what you do, well, don't even try to do what I do. Like, don't, because I'm not gonna try to do what you do either. So my whole thing is, if you want to know, I got a whole list of things for you to be healthy, for your children to be healthy, for your marriage to be healthy. That's my strive. But that was because that came from me being disobedient. It really did.
And I think, Brandon, too, the flip side of this conversation is that, America defines motherhood as giving birth to children. When we don't really talk about, women, I have multiple women who have mothered me. So yes, I do have a biological mother, and my mother has done an excellent job, but Paula has mothered me. There are a lot of people, whether it be work, mentors, women at church, who have poured into me as not only a wife, but as a mother. So I think that that's also, and women who adopt, that's just something that we don't talk about. That's something that America doesn't think about when they think about motherhood. They think about, can you push a baby out? When, that's not really the case.
And Paula, so I'm listening to you and just see all this passion. And you said, when I had my first kid, and if people paid attention to the last episode, you guys have 7 children. And I'm sure you can speak to how tough it is raising one child, and this child is only 2 years old. You've had 7 kids, and you still look youthful, vibrant. Like you still have things going on. You would think someone who's had 7 kids, like, I'm not doing nothing. Just be so done and just tired. Because even you're telling me, hey, I've got things to do now this evening, that you still have kids who are in the home, and you got to go and support them. And I'm just amazed at that. And so I can imagine how tired you can be. And so I guess going back to the original question, how do you find time just for yourself?
I make time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I make time. Because if I'm empty, I'm giving fumes.
Yeah.
And nobody
That's
wants to
good.
breathe fumes. And fumes are deadly.
That's good.
And my fumes are deadly when I'm tired. So I make sure that I carve out times for me. I was telling you earlier that a lot of times if people call me and I'm like, oh, I'm in my office right now. My office is McDonald's parking lot. That's where I go and get in my head and get in the Word, and Jesus and I have conversations. And this is so that when I meet everybody else that I'm going to encounter in my day, I'm not empty.
Yeah.
And I'm still able and ready to give. And I've, after I turned 40, was when I decided it would be a good idea for me to take care of my health. Yeah. So I do carve out time to also work out, and I encourage other people to work out. I'm an ex-fluffy chick, and so I know what it's like to be a heavy woman, and to have had a bunch of babies and not make that time to be healthy. And then I'm like, I woke up one day and I'm like, I need to be alive for all these kids, and it's not fair to them to lose me because I didn't take care of me. So it isn't just about me having me time. My me time isn't just about me. It's about my husband, my children, the people that I mentor, the people that I counsel, the people that I encounter in the grocery store, the people that I encounter on the highways and byways. It's about everybody. It isn't just about me. And so if I can get women to understand that your me time is important and it's not a selfish thing, unless you're making it a selfish thing. Like if your me time is you spend 6 hours on the couch eating bonbons, which is what people used to think of stay-at-home mothering, then your me time is being squandered. But if it's useful and beneficial and fruitful and profitable, then you need to make it. You have to make it. It needs to be a priority.
And so you spoke about being like intentional. I would assume it's the same thing with your dreams, because you mentioned having dreams outside of just being, a mother and a wife. And I know you probably don't you have an event coming up this Saturday?
This Saturday.
And so, I guess speak to your dreams and how balancing that and I guess what are those dreams that you have?
So, for me, as long as I have remembered, I've always had a burden for women. That's just always been my thing. And so as I became an adult, and when, my husband and I got married, I realized that there were there was just a lack of resources for wives in spaces of faith. And so, that is how, the Bonafide Wife came about. And I started that, group with, it was 3 women. And now there's over 60. Wow. So I would love to do that full time. I would love to travel the world to empower women and wives of faith full time. And if I'm honest, balancing my time and being intentional about my dreams is an area of growth. That is an area of growth for me because when I give, when I serve, when I work, I give it 1,000. And sometimes I don't know how to turn that 1,000 off. So now that I'm out for the summer, now that school is out, I'm trying to understand that rest is better than productivity. So yeah.
And what about you, Paula? What are some of your dreams and things that you have?
It's That's an interesting question because my dream. If you ever read my signage on emails or text message, it says "Living the Dream," Paula, living the dream, fulfilling the call. My dream was to be a wife and a mom. I'm living my dream. I'm fulfilling that call. And so at this point in my life, God is calling me to really, we have the same vision, which is, and I've always had a vision to help women, moms specifically, wives specifically, but any woman, but that's kind of like my wheelhouse and always has been. And for years, people have been saying, you need to write a book, you need to write a book, you need to write this down. Your family is crazy, your family is special, you got all this stuff going on. And I'm like, nobody wants to read my story. And then the Lord one day said, it's time. So I have penned it. And now I am praying for the resources to publish it. And I know that I will be speaking on the circuit as well. to women, just to really just to encourage them and to empower them. The exact same thing, because I want to see women receive the help that they need for their health, body, soul, mind, and spirit, so that they can have hope to continue in this calling. Because whether you work inside your home or outside your home, whether you gave birth or you adopted or you fought, whatever it is, whatever your station is, it's a calling. And it takes a lot of work to do this calling well. I mean, you have a lot of women who do it. And my thing is, as long as you've given it your best shot, that's really all anybody can ask. But I'd like to see more resources. Like I want to be able to touch a woman, to have her talk to me. I'm always looking for an older woman who's ahead of me, 5-10 years in some station of her life, to be able to speak to me, speak into my life and say, hey, I had grown kids too, and this is what happened, or this is what I do with my grandchildren. I've never been a grandma before. I have 3 grandchildren at this point, but this is still uncharted territory. My oldest grandchild is 8. So as I watch him becoming, like, I'm looking at him now and I'm saying, he's on the precipice of preteen. Like, I can see that now, and I know I need to handle him differently. My relationship with him needs to change a little bit. But I'd love to talk to another grandma who's, just that much ahead of me and say, what did you do? How did you do this? We need to be there for each other, whatever the stage of life. And I don't even necessarily mean, she doesn't have to be older than me, but if she's ahead of me in whatever area she's ahead of me, I need her. And we need each other.
Well, I definitely want to make sure I say congrats, because it sounds like you guys are not just having these dreams, but actually living them out. So congrats to that, because, again, I wanted to make sure that even though I'm not a mother, I can look from the outside in and just see that double standard that gets put on women, on mothers, and just realizing that my wife isn't just my wife. She isn't just, Autumn's mother, and that she's got a life, she's got dreams outside of that, and wanted to make sure that I touched on that, and just, I thought you guys did a great job. But that led me to just wanting to have a discussion on expectations when you are a mother, and just having, and I think we both can speak to it, just because our kids are so young, and just have this idea of, man, I want my kids to do X, Y, and Z, and do this. And I think Paula, as your kids get older, you're like, how they just veer, or maybe they did do as you had expected. Like for me, my expectation, I've got a daughter, Autumn, and just from my experience, I've seen a lot of women take a back seat when it comes to theology, and it's like the men who knows a lot of theology and can have the conversations about the Bible and stuff like that, where, and I don't mean to sound this away, but like the woman may just know like a surface level thing, and it's like, I don't want that for my wife, I don't want that for my daughter. I want them to be just as knowledgeable as I am. But the reality is, she's almost turning 3, and it's like, what am I doing right now to actually be instilling these things? So even I can see having that goal, having that expectation, and the reality is that I even dropped the ball in that arena, and just being really willing to acknowledge that, and hopefully grow and mature. But what are some expectations that you have as a mother?
I think my husband and I always have these conversations about who Judah and our other children will grow up to be. And we've talked about, like just the other day was a commercial. We were watching TV, and we said, wow, we hope that when Judah goes to school, that if someone doesn't have lunch, that he would give them lunch. And we talked about all these different scenarios, but I think that above all else, I think that we want him to know who Jesus is. And I think that even for me at his school, I've talked to a lot of moms about, how they're, doing this with the baby, how they're doing this with the baby. And I think that sometimes we can lose sight of what discipleship is within our home with the baby. So I think that for me, I don't expect anything from my children. I think that I expect God to chase them down.
That's a good one.
I don't really, expect anything from them. I think that, of course, we would want them to, go out and, be, the offsprings of us, but I hope that they will, implement what we taught them. But I think that
Yo, my world don't stop when the beats commence. Said I'm climbing up this ladder just to get over this fence and run far, far away from the games people play. In this melancholy modern day music, Malay, touche. Pussy cats with lives to spare that kick you know in your heart, nice as hell. Yeah, be aware, beware. I hate to see you less a liver or worse. Polar bear, winter time, catch the river. Now that's cold, and like that, now that's old. Didn't buy the last copy of this.